All right, today we're talking about the story of a man who built North America's largest solar lighting company and then had to rebuild it all when it all fell apart. We're going to tell that story in a second. His name is Sean Bourquin. I'll tell you more about him in a second, so stay tuned.
Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we feature top entrepreneurs, business leaders, and thought leaders and ask them how they built key relationships to get where they are today. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I am the host of this show, and you know, if you've listened before, that every week we have great, smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs from all kinds of companies. We've had Netflix and Grubhub, Redfin, Gusto, Kinko's, YPO, EO, Activation Blizzard. Check out the archives. Lots of great episodes for you. Before we get into this episode, it's brought to you by Rise25, our company where we help businesses to develop relationships with their best clients, referral partners, and strategic partners with done-for-you podcasts and content marketing. And if you want to learn more about how you can do that as well, you can go to our website, which is rise25.com, or email us at support@rise25.com. All right, let's launch into it. My guest today is Sean Bourquin. He's the president and founder of Full On Lighting. He's a longtime entrepreneur with over 2 decades of experience in the lighting industry. Full On Lighting is his most recent lighting company. They are focused on creating incredibly high quality mountain bike lights. These are not inexpensive, cheap bike lights you buy on Amazon, but they are really amazing bike lights. And prior to this, he was the CEO and founder of First Light Technologies, which is a solar-powered outdoor lighting company. I've got a number of solar-powered lights outside of my house. I think they're so cool. So we're going to be talking about that. And it was one of Canada's fastest-growing companies for 7 consecutive years, growing year after year. So we're going to talk about some of those strategies. But Sean, such a pleasure to have you here today. And I always like to get to know my guests a little bit, what they were like as a kid. And I guess you eventually became an engineer, so this makes sense. Your mom started calling you Pickle because you like to pick things apart. Like I'm picturing you with like a radio or something, like taking apart and trying to figure out how it worked. Is that what it was like for you?
That's exactly what it was like. Anything electrical or mechanical I could smash or take apart, I would do it.
And you were raised to kind of like working class parents, kind of a blue collar upbringing. Never really thought about being an entrepreneur as you got older. What was like the vision for you as a kid?
I think, I had just really hardworking parents, and then the vision was just go out, work hard, provide for your family, get a good union job with the pension and the benefits, and it was really a value of security, and then I went and got that, and wasn't really my path.
Yeah, my grandfather was he was a B-17 pilot in World War II, and then spent the rest of his career working for either for the Air Force or after he became a civilian working at the Pentagon. And he would like invest like $100 in like a US government bond that paid like $103 7 years later. That was the conservative kind of upbringing that I came from. And it's crazy to think like what a different world it is now compared to what that world was like. But if you went through the Great Depression, you went through World War II, I think a lot of that people from that generation just craved that stability.
Yeah, I agree. It was an interesting thing. I was working at a shipyard as an apprentice in electronics, and I had a guy say to me, I've been here for 25 years, and he snapped his finger and he says it went by just like that. And for me, that idea of spending 25 years doing that was horrifying,
Yeah.
right? I like change. I'm curious by nature, and I just want to learn new stuff. I don't want to get into sort of boredom,
So you
routines.
so you're working in a shipyard, working on Canadian warships in electronics, and eventually you end up getting an internship at like age 25. Talk to me a little about how that came about.
Yeah, I went down that path of getting a good, government job and doing that, and figured out pretty quickly it wasn't for me. So I realized that in the same amount of time as I could finish my apprenticeship, I could get my engineering degree. So I went and did that, and did an internship in California, as it turns out, and then did an internship at a startup solar lighting company here in Victoria. And it was early days for that company. They were making all kinds of interesting solar LED lighting products. And I got a chance to meet the founder. And he immediately impressed me in a lot of different ways and very quickly kind of became a mentor for me, just due to his nature and his personality.
What was it? Was it something about solar lighting in particular that drew you to that industry, or is it a little bit of a happenstance you ended up in it?
Well, total happenstance. Like I'd worked in microwave communications in California, and I'd worked in before working at the shipyard. I'd worked in heating, ventilation, air conditioning controllers. So the solar lighting was just a happenstance, and yeah, it was. I wouldn't have known at the time that it would have been kind of an important moment for me.
Yeah. Now, I imagine you could give us a treatise on this, but I've noticed that solar lighting products have evolved dramatically over the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years or so. There are so many more available. I didn't even think twice about buying external lighting that would be hardwired in my front garden area because it's so easy to get solar powered lights. And I love kind of the environmental aspect of it, that it's not actually consuming any power. It's just coming straight from the sun. So can you share with us, why has there been such a, evolution with that industry?
Yeah, it's an interesting nexus of a few different technologies. You've got obviously the solar power. So the big change there over the years has been scale and cost reductions and some performance improvements. So getting more economically viable over the years for sure. The LED technology, I think most of us know, has been transformational in the world of lighting, just from an energy efficiency perspective. So that's been a huge enabler. And then now, especially, there's been step changes in battery technology. In the early days of NiCad or um, lead acid batteries on the commercial side of solar lighting, it was situationally sensible to do it. But through the improvements in those things, and the thing that we did especially well at First Light was the control technology that ties everything together, making that smarter, more adaptive. You put those things all together, and now you've got a product in the world of solar lighting that, in the commercial context that I was working in, most of the time it was by far the most economical thing that anyone could do. If you're lighting a parking lot, a park, a path, a street, it will become the de facto way of doing most outdoor lighting.
Yeah. You ended up having a moment where you were working for a company and you were a product manager managing their outdoor lighting projects, and you had a vision of some product that you wanted to develop, and they turned it down. This is kind of a classic story of how so many companies start, right? It's kind of the budding entrepreneur doesn't realize they're an entrepreneur. They just got kind of pissed off. They're like, forget it. I'm going to go do this myself. So tell us that story.
Yeah, it was an interesting one. We had worked with a company out of the Bay Area on industrial design for a new family of these solar lights. As the product manager, we didn't even need to do that. We kind of knew what we needed to do, but the company wanted to spend a lot of money and try to make a really good decision. So, all right, fine, we do all this work, and we come down to a choice between this and that. And I had done the work with my market manager, the engineering team, and we were very clear that this one is the way to go. And then there was some other people within the company that wanted to go this way. And I was told as product manager that I was not qualified to make the decision. And so
Mm.
I'm thinking to
Oh
myself,
no.
like, yeah, it's like if I'm not qualified as product manager to make the decision, you probably should fire me. But
Yeah.
that was my inner voice, of course. But instead I said, well, all right, well, who is qualified? And they're like, well, the CEO and the market manager can make the decision. All right, fair enough. There's no way the CEO is going to go against the team. And so, I'd gone around saying like, if this guy picks this other thing, like I am out of here. Like I just started
Was it
because
in retrospect now, was it a dramatically different technology? What without getting too
no,
deep on it, why did you feel so passionately about this?
it was honestly, it was really an aesthetic choice along with some technical factors, where this option was a better, like our audience at the time in solar lighting, solar was new, LEDs were pretty new, so a part of the messaging was, okay, like you need to be reassuring with your design. And the other design was very bold. and it had some of the design language for me was superfluous, and the brand of that company was not superfluous, very purposeful, very form follows function kind of
Hmm.
thinking. And it was just so out of step. In hindsight, would it have mattered that much? Like the product failed as it turned out.
Oh,
So it's good
that
in
must
some ways.
feel gratifying, I guess.
Yeah, but I'll never know if the one that I wanted to do would have done any better. I think it would have. It would have been easier to make, would have been less expensive. Like a
Mm.
few other things would have been better. But anyways, I lost that battle. But and so I got overruled. The CEO went against the team and chose the bold design. And so it's like, you know what? Like I think I have some better ideas of what solar lighting could be, and I'd like to find out. So I very quickly started making a plan to go do it myself.
And what was the plan? You're at this point, your mentor Dave had moved on, I believe, right?
Yeah, he was a shareholder, but he was out of the day-to-day of the company. And so I talked to him as it turned out. Like I had an idea of a particular product I wanted to make that had not been done well ever. So I went to Dave, and then I had a fellow product manager who ended up jumping with me, became my co-founder. And so I talked to Dave, like, hey, Dave, I want to make a solar bollard, and bollard was not a word I knew in terms of lighting until I started working with them.
What is that? Solar bollard? Well,
Like a 3 foot tall post with a light on the top, like
okay,
kind of a glorified garden light, really.
okay.
And so, once you start looking for them, they're all over the place.
Yeah,
But they're just not.
yeah, I'm pretty sure I know what that looks like. Yeah, yeah.
So I said, Dave, like, hey, I think we should make this. And he's like, I would have made that years ago. So that was like, all right, that was the context to
Yeah.
go, a sort of a to jump, and and so we jumped, which was crazy because I had 4 kids. Well, at that time, I had 2 kids with a third on the way. No money saved, no
Yeah.
nothing. Like we just jumped. And
Wow.
so it was a great exercise in being very action oriented. So the plan was, since we didn't have any money, we couldn't go make a product. So, well, how are we going to get money? Well, let's be consultants. So,
Hmm.
I had met a guy in
Classic way of
Oh yeah.
doing it. Yeah.
Oh man. Knowing what I know now, would I have done it? I don't know. But I met a guy at a trade show in New York, a Colombian, and so I went to Colombia, and with him, we won a pretty large project for the company I was working for. And then while I was down there, I went down there like 4 times over a pretty short span. And we started talking about, like there might be some opportunity here for LED lighting in Colombia and solar. So, and then he had some ideas about some energy services stuff that we could do in Florida. And so it seemed like, okay, we could do some consulting work here. This could be a good way to get started. So we jumped, and then within I think a month or more or less, maybe a little more, we had to pivot because
Mm.
the like it just wasn't working. Like we could see immediately, like the idea of like, oh, we'll just do this work and we'll get paid and it'll be great. It's like, no, no, that's not how it was working. These projects had a longer
Yeah.
sales cycle than immediate, which is the time frame we needed to be working. So we're like, uh-oh, like we're in trouble here because we had to mortgages to pay and lines of
Mm.
credit, all these things that were just
Mm.
sitting there as obligations. So we had to make money immediately. So we just
Yeah.
got out the Rolodexes and started flipping through business cards and started reaching out and hustling
Yeah.
immediately, which ended up being fortuitous because the largest shareholder of the company I'd worked with, I developed a bit of a relationship with him at a trade show and hit him. And they hired us very quickly to market research report for them on LEDs and LED lighting and make recommendations on who to invest in. So it was a fantastic way to sort of deepen my market understanding and get someone to give us some money while we did it.
Yeah.
So it was, and then there was some solar programs were booming. So we were doing solar power system design consulting, which was my co-founder's strength. I was doing lighting design, strategic marketing, anything someone would give us money for, and
How
that
long
went
did it
on.
take you? You eventually
Uh,
get into manufacturing and designing your own
yep.
products. Okay, so how long did it take you to get out of that consulting and advisory work and into actually what you wanted to do, which was producing your own product lines?
Yeah, good question. It was a bit under a year. So what I'd done is gone back to Dave, my mentor, and said, "Hey, what do you think about getting investing in us?"
Hmm.
And it was about a 20-minute conversation, no pitch deck or anything. It was like the most basic
Yeah.
pitch. And he's like, "Okay." And
Yeah.
he cut us the check, and at that time it was $100,000, and it's like, all right, got a hundred thousand
Well,
dollars to get this first solar baller designed to market. Let's go, and that's what we did. So
and
my
how
my
did that
co-founder,
work out? Was that enough money? Did you run out of money?
no,
Did
it's good. It's shocking. It wouldn't be enough. Wouldn't be enough today, that's for sure. But we made it work. Like my co-founder kept doing the solar consulting, which was paying the
mm,
basic bills. So the 100,000, I could pull in, an embedded system hardware designer, a firmware guy, mechanical guys. I could just bring in all the people that we needed. And I basically functioned in my product manager way, where it's like I know what the thing needs to be, I know what it needs to do, I know where it needs to be priced, and just pulled in a little team to help me bang it out. And we get to the end, and I thought it was pretty ugly. I didn't really I didn't love it. I thought,
yeah.
well, it is what it is,
Yeah.
and this has got to be good enough for now. And we launched it, and it was an interesting year or so after that, because I don't know how many people do like consulting and then launch product, and then you're in
Because
a
you have to
tough
balance
position.
both. Yeah. Yeah. So you're trying to sell the new product. And so were you selling B2B? Were you selling this commercially? You were,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, B2B. Luckily, from the work we had done before, we had some good relationships, and potential people who were interested in distributing, repping the
Okay.
product that we had made. So that was pretty good. But what ended up happening is like we needed more. Like in the lighting industry, commercial lighting, you tend to go with manufacturers' reps, agents that are regional, sign them up, and then they're repping your product, and everything goes well. You sell some stuff. And what we found is it was easy to sign up reps, but the sales just didn't happen.
Mm,
We were able to get some sales using people we knew, which was good. It got us going. Like we won a nice U.S. Army deal in Louisiana, of all places, and won
mm.
some cities in Florida. So that was great. Won a custom project in the Bahamas. That was pretty cool with a big hotel down there. But the reps just weren't making it happen. So then we're like, okay, it was an important lesson around sales,
Yeah.
and for me, the lesson was no one cares more about what you're doing than you do.
Yeah.
And then it empowered us to take responsibility for that.
So what did
You
you
know,
do? Did you stop using reps and build your own sales force or what?
yeah, we kept some of the reps, but we started knocking on doors ourselves.
Mm,
And over time, our ability to do prospecting, lead gen, and segment and run campaigns just got better and better and better. And I think really became the thing that allowed us to grow really predictably and strongly and profitably, where we did like it's hard scaling a sales force. We didn't have tons of bodies. Like even by the end, I think I had 8 or 10 people.
yeah.
Not a lot, but bringing sort of an engineering, problem solving, curious mindset to lead gen was transformational.
And
Like
how
in
did you figure out this is such a specific product, right? Like you mentioned like a hotel or like an army base. Like how did you know that the timing was right? How did you
Yeah.
decide on who to target? You could knock on a lot of doors,
Oh yeah.
on malls and commercial facilities and stuff like that without getting any sales.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was an interesting one. That's where Dave came back in. It was 2012. And we'd sort of shut down the consulting because it's like we got it. Like the product's the future. It's the thing that it can allow us to really scale. Like I find consulting a difficult, and people who can make consulting work an admirable business model. But for
Yeah.
me, it wasn't my thing. Um, so we were talking, Dave. It was 2012. I think we'd lost money that year, and we're talking about all the lessons we'd learned about stuff. And Dave's like, enough with the lessons learned. He's like, you got to find the pointy end of this stick. Like, what is it? And then, I thought it sort of bugged me that he's poking us. And then went away and thought about it. It's like, yeah, pointy end of the stick in our case was municipalities, cities, towns and cities. That was the pointy end of the stick. And the reason it was the pointy end of the stick is, to your point, we knew they had the outdoor lighting problems, that our problems were well suited to solve.
Hmm.
We knew they had budget. And the coolest thing from a lead gen perspective is they were easy to find.
Hmm.
And if my memory serves correct, I think there was at that time 4,800 towns and cities with populations above 5,000 in the US,
Mm.
right? Like we just got good at like getting online, like let's gen them all. And then we knew through our work who are the titles that are most likely to be interested in what we're doing. Okay, directors of Parks and Rec, Public Works
Yeah.
people, streetlight people, and then we just grab communications and hit them,
Well,
sequence them, and learning over time. At first, it was all
yeah.
spreadsheets and things, and then getting the CRM and then automating, and
Hmm.
then just refine, refine, refined. It's like I love it because I don't know who said it, but I found that sales is 80% science and 20% art.
Mm.
So it helped me as an engineer because I worked with a lot of like
Yeah,
really
so,
like
some engineers make great salespeople because they build these systems and then follow through on these systems.
that's what I did. Like I when I was a product manager and a sales engineer before that, like I would be a kind of a wingman for salespeople. If they go into a meeting and there's some like engineers, like we're the worst because we'll want to poke holes in someone's story and you know be skeptical. And so all right, so we go into the sales guys goes into meetings and the engineers start poking holes in what they're doing, and then I would come in and okay, I could deal with the objections and I could
Yeah.
work at their level and I could win their confidence in what we were doing and why we were doing it.
Mm.
So that ended up working, but it's like I didn't want to sit in on every sales call.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't scale.
Yeah.
So then it became to your point, like systems and structures and messaging and just iterating. It's just
Yeah.
I like the we did that with our products too, right? It's like
Yeah.
that first product that went to market was kind of ugly. We iterated on it.
Yeah.
I don't like
Yeah.
the casting does this. Let's make the casting do that. Oh, let's
Right.
go from sand casting to permanent mold. Let's get the cost out. Let's make it look better. And just that I think as entrepreneurs, sometimes it's hard to know how good is good enough.
Mm.
Like get to wherever good enough is, just get there,
Right.
get in market, be it sales or be it with a product, and just learn and
So,
just
any other things that you think you did during this time period? You had 7 years of 35% or more growth. That's just insane. Anything else that you did during that time period that led to that kind of growth?
um I think a lot of it was also paying attention. Like we started with one product, and just
Mm.
paying attention and listening to, the people that we are working with, to the customers, and looking at, building out that right portfolio of products. Like a bollard wouldn't have gotten us there.
Hmm.
We had to go into other applications and just so very intentionally thinking about like, okay, what other applications could we address with this product? And, it turned out the same set of customers also needed those products. So it's really just trying to expand, share of wallet that we would have with our customers, and
Yeah.
help them. I
Yeah.
think like why I think we were successful is like I wanted to help these people. Like I
Mm.
knew that solar lighting well executed was the best choice for them.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
the other thing we did that was different in solar lighting is most solar lighting people say, you'll ask me, oh, how much will I save if I do the solar lighting? And then the normal answer is, well, it depends on your situation. We got to do some modeling. We got to do this stuff. It's like I never answered the question that way. I would answer you, John, we're going to save you at least 50% up front um, on capital costs. And if we don't do it.
Mm.
And there's another thing in there too. Solar lighting's annoying. Like where you are, you can go buy a solar garden light. Maybe they'll work for you. You put them on the north side of your house, maybe they won't. You put them
Mm.
under a tree, maybe they won't. In a commercial context, right? Reliability is really important. And so the variable nature of solar is problematic.
Mm.
Like it can be a very engineered solution on a per project basis. And it's like
Hmm.
I knew that wouldn't scale. So using my sort of my type of engineering is computer engineering, specifically embedded systems engineering. Like I like coming up with systems and making things smarter, making things easier. So what we did with the solar lights, I think that really changed the game is we made the lights think for themselves. Because it's
Mm.
like, hey, John, you tell me, I want to put one of these lights in my driveway. It's like, well, I don't want to have to do modeling about what your driveway is going to do from a solar energy perspective and then configure a product and send it to you. And you got to make sure you put it just in the right spot. Like
Yeah.
imagine a 5 mile trail where there's some trees and
Yeah.
not trees, and it's just like a
Yeah.
nightmare. So, what knows best? That was one of the early things I figured out when starting First Light is like, solar lighting will never scale unless solar lights are more like regular light.
Mm.
They've got to be easy or
Mm-hmm.
easier than hooking up to the grid.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, we made the lights smart and the light thought for themselves and made their
Mm.
own decisions about what makes sense. And it just made them on par, like, or on the whole perform better
Mm.
than other solar powered products and were a lot easier to deal with than other commercial lights. So the fundamental product was easier to deal with and quite distinct, which is great from a marketing perspective. It's easy to pitch it because it's different,
Yeah.
and we had very clear reasons as to why we made it that way. So that was the, there's product reasons, there's go to route
Yeah.
to market reasons.
So
As
because
a
you're
result.
adding like this functionality into the light, I imagine your cost point had to be a bit higher. Um, did you have to deal with other competitors moving into the space, from abroad or whatever, with kind of downward price competition?
Yeah, the market's interesting in that way. There was a lot of sort of incumbent brands that weren't like, strangely, we made these solar bollards, 3 foot pole, top 3 foot poles with a light on the top, essentially, small little products, glorified garden lights, but they are actually the hardest technical problem to solve because you got the small amount of solar. So to make a useful light out of that, you really need to dial in performance. So
Mm,
to your point, like these aren't typically consumer products. They're definitely professional lighting products, and people will need to really care about performance and longevity to buy them. And the funny thing, though, economically, is those products were way cheaper than competing wired solutions,
hmm.
and most solar lighting companies didn't come down into that space. So it's a bit of a, analogy like a blue ocean versus
Yeah,
red ocean.
yeah, I was gonna say you found a blue ocean for yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and even by the time, 14 years later, very little competition in that space.
Hmm.
Now, so there was a commercial tier of manufacturers in the United States, Canada, Europe, and they were playing in normally larger scale solar lighting applications. There's been some consolidation, but they mostly still exist. And then on the bottom end, for sure, we've had, Chinese products come into the market claiming all kinds of things. But luckily, I think for us, the lighting industry had gone through low cost LED lighting products coming into the market, claiming big things, and people
Mm.
suffering reliability and quality issues. And our customers in the commercial side, municipalities, cities, they just didn't want to deal with it. So they
Yeah,
kind of
yeah, makes
knew,
sense. Yeah.
like, don't go with the low cost option. It's going to cost you more in the long run. One of our
So,
sales guys always said, buy once, cry once. So it's like, I didn't really like that, but all right, whatever.
so I want to ask about you and your co-founder ended up having falling out. This is around 2019. Take me through what that was like.
It was an interesting time. 20, yeah, summer 2019. Within the span of a few weeks, our business relationship blew up. His marriage blew up. My marriage blew up. Like, it was just everything blew
All
up.
of that. Jeez.
All of it. Yeah, it was a classic. I think in hindsight, like, although the business was successful, profitable, we're kicking out dividends, things were good, just there was something wrong for all of us. And it just all came to a head. It really, was one of the reasons I joined Entrepreneurs Organization, where I'd done a lot of business work, learning. I joined an organization for tech company CEOs where really focused on, adopting like a scaling up sort of methodology and really driving systematic growth of your business, which worked really well for me. But I'd neglected my own mental health for sure. And I
Mm,
think my co-founder did, and it all kind of came to a head. And it triggered just a series of difficult times that ended up with a shotgun scenario going wrong. in the sense of like ending up in court. COVID happened, shut courts down.
So
It was
just for
just,
those who don't know what a shotgun clause
uh,
is in a partnership agreement, can you explain what that is?
so, we had, I think we'd come to the place where it's like, I don't want to do this anymore with you. Like I would like, and Dave had invested in our company, was our angel. Dave and I were like trying to buy out the co-founder and we couldn't get that done. And so I'm
Was
like,
this his original 100K still, or he put other rounds of investment in?
he did one other round, not
Okay.
much.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we got her going with not much money. Um, So we tried to buy out. That didn't work. And honestly, mentally, I was in the point where it's like I can't do this anymore. I need an out. And Dave's like, well, let's just use the shotgun. So we triggered the shotgun just to force. So it gave a 60-day window where, we offer up our shares for a price. He can accept the offer and take us out, or if he doesn't, we take him out. But I think with about 3 days left in that election period, he filed an injunction against us. Uh, he wanted a bunch of information that, in our perspective, like wasn't part of the deal.
Okay.
And so before we got to hear that issue in court, COVID happened and shut
Oh,
our courts
jeez.
down
Oh,
for like 5 months.
uh-huh.
So in the
So you're kind of
meantime,
in a state of suspended animation here.
yes, in that process, whereas the business kept growing. And so then geez, it was
Because
it
then,
was
of course,
crazy.
like during COVID, a lot of people started doing these home projects and things like that. Well, this is a commercial. You did more commercial, but you found that the business was still growing.
Yeah, we grew. It was
Oh,
crazy. We weren't sure if we were going to even exist. Like things were looking grim at first, but then we
yeah.
found a way. And so we grew through that, and then we ended up in our provincial Supreme Court, which then, because the court had shut down for 5 months, it took another like 10 months to get a decision from our
Wow.
provincial Supreme Court, which we won. And then months went by, and then there was an appeal to our provincial appeals court, and then they won, which was a stunning learning around the court system and lawyers.
Hmm.
That one judge can interpret it totally this way, and
For sure.
then
Yeah. Yeah.
another judge totally that way.
Yeah.
Same facts.
Yeah.
So it's like, wow, like you know, don't go to court. It's a coin
Well,
flip.
yeah.
Like,
I'm a recovering lawyer, so I'll say that for sure.
oh
Don't go to
man,
court. Not worth it. You're gonna lose a lot of
no,
money. Hmm.
it was tough. Like I think that was a tough learning. But when it all started, right, I pin a lot of this on just poor mental health on my co-founder and my side. Like, this is not something that probably should have gone down that path, but in the moment, it just felt like it was the only way.
So
And by the
how did you resolve all this? How did you come to some kind of resolution?
So we ended up waiting in line at the Supreme Court of Canada, and while we were waiting in line, I went on retreat with my EO forum, my group forum. And I came back with that with three goals, and one of them was like, I just wanted to put this to bed with my co-founder. Like I'm okay walking away. Like instead of like, I want to fight for that business, I was like, I want to be done with my co-founder and move on. And I had a couple of other goals. But, based on that, Dave and I ended up just settling and walking away
You
and just
said
take,
waiting online. Were you literally waiting in line? You went over and talked to him, or you mean
no.
you're waiting for it to be appealed to the Supreme Court?
Yeah, we took leave to appeal to the Supreme Court, and then
Okay.
you wait in the virtual line,
Okay.
and then in our court process, I don't know how it works in the United States, but in our process, you don't automatically get to go to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
So we weren't sure if they were going to hear our case or not. We thought it was going to be a really interesting case to listen to, but then for me, it's like just waiting. We'd spent by that time 3 years in this process.
So in the
Like,
meantime, you basically you and your business partner came to agreement on a settlement to resolve it.
yeah, end of 2022, we solved
Okay.
and started 2023
And
fresh.
then so you've since started a new company, Full On Lighting, which is a really high performance, very strong mountain bike light. So if you thought solar lighting for commercial wasn't enough of a specific niche, we're going even more specific with a very expensive mountain bike light. So talk a little bit about why I imagine, were you crazy about mountain biking and you wanted to combine that passion, or how did you
Yeah,
decide on this new niche?
definitely. I've been a mountain biker my whole life, and I've found bike life have been pretty poor, and I hated night riding. But as with four kids and a busy professional for a lot of years, I really didn't have a choice. If I wanted to ride, it was going to be at night, through the fall, winter, early spring season, at least up here in BC. Um, and when I start something like the solar lighting company, I picked a solar bollard, a weird product category,
Yeah.
but there's opportunity there, and it's quite narrow. Like I like picking a pretty pointy problem to start with, and then I
Hmm.
go broader. So full on lighting, I picked again, like the bollard was the hardest technical problem to solve in outdoor lighting because of it's so tight and compact. This one, mountain biking on the cycling side is the hardest technical problem to solve. You've got people going real fast, 20, 25 miles an hour through trails where trees are zinging by, or, all sorts of bad things could happen very quickly. So creating good vision for people is difficult. And so I wanted to start there. And as a product manager, one of the things I'd always wanted to find is a problem that I personally was experiencing.
Mm.
And, 'cause I've made a lot of products over the years, but none of them were for me. They were all for, like it spent time in market, talking to customers, understanding their needs and figuring out problems that would address their needs. This one was one that I intimately understand and could solve. So you're
Hmm.
right. It was a nexus of like, hey, I've got a bunch of these business skills, I got a bunch of product skills, and I love riding. So let's muck them together and then we'll
Yeah.
go from there. So full on exists. Our purpose is broader. We exist to help people work and play better in the dark. So
Hmm.
this is first product category, mountain biking. For most people, no doubt, for Canadian $495 is an expensive light. The most expensive light I've bought personally is $2,000 out of Germany.
Wow.
Oh yeah, it's
Wow.
nuts. Yeah, you can spend, 20, $30. So there's a
Yeah.
quite a continuum there. But it's certainly we're priced in the premium thing. And really like what are like, the goal, wasn't a particular number of lumens or anything like that. The goal was to create a situation where someone can ride just like it's day without
Mm.
limitations, without
Mm.
holding back. So our product, this first light we've made, really let people, three things: ride faster, be safer, and have more fun.
Mm.
Right? It's a pretty simple emotional connection I'm trying to
Yeah.
make with people, compared to anything else you can possibly buy.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that's been fun is we started shipping in January. And when I get lights in people's hands, I'll personally go night riding with demo groups in our region, at least
Mm.
here.
Mm.
And to have people be like, whoa, like that blew my mind.
Yeah.
Like it makes me feel good as a product person to like, okay, like this is
Yeah.
what I hope is going to happen. And to
Yeah.
have feedback come back better than I expected, feels really good.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if you come riding along and you come across a bear or a mountain lion or something like that. Ever have any of those types of experiences or no?
Yeah, there's been lots of situations, especially in like the scenario, like most people with their flashlights can identify or camping lights are kind of a spotlight, and then there's
Yeah.
darkness kind of in your periphery. And
Yeah.
so what we've created fills your whole field of view there's a lot of good reasons to you want to fill your field of view, but with those spotlighty things, like sometimes you'll look around and they'll be
You
like
see the little
glowing,
light. You see
oh
the
yeah,
glowing eyes. Oh
glowing
no.
eyes, and
Ugh.
then you can't tell what it is, and then your
Uh-huh.
mind, I've ridden a lot by myself in the woods
Oof.
here. You're right, we've got bears and cougars or mountain lions here, and
Uh,
I don't know. I am, normally most people will say like the mountain lions, they're seeing you, but you're probably not seeing them.
right. That's true.
And
That's true. Yeah.
I've had bear encounters a lot. Somehow they just seem less scary to me.
They
Most of
did.
those.
I agree with that. Mountain lions to me are petrifying. Probably because there's lion in the name. That's probably why.
Well, they stalk you and you don't know.
Oh yeah.
Like there's
Hmm.
every year on the island. Like I think Vancouver Island, where I live, we have the highest density of mountain lions in the world.
Wow.
And I have yet to see one. And like I said, I'm
That's crazy.
pretty
Uh-huh.
sure they've seen me, but every year there's stories that come out about like some kid on a bike getting followed by a cougar
Uh-huh.
or people the odd attack, which is sad, but it
Yeah.
happens. But
It's scary.
I think
So full on lighting is your new company, but you also have a chemistry company. So I know your background as an engineer, but tell me a little bit about that. XLYNX Materials. You
uh,
decided to do that as well.
yeah, XLYNX Materials. It's a really interesting company focused on molecular crosslinkers, which really these are products that allow you to bond really hard to bond materials, like different kind of polymers, that
Mm,
are low surface energy and don't tend to want to bond any other way. This is a pretty unique chemistry coming out of our a mix of our local university and then a serial entrepreneur. And as Dave and I were looking at leaving First Light, he introduced me to an old colleague of his. They started a number of companies together back in the 70s. They're part of the first generation of sort of tech entrepreneurs in this area. And so I met his colleague Peter, and I liked Peter, and Peter's looking for the next generation of people to sort of help him you know lift his ideas off the ground. These guys are very entrepreneurial, very idea focused, but I think they're in their 70s now. So Peter, yeah, but Peter's an idea guy. He's always innovating, always finding new ideas, and so with the skills I developed at first, like going from nothing to a decent sized company, seemed well suited to help this company on the business side,
yeah.
which for me was a cool experiment because most companies I've been in, I had a pretty good understanding of the technology,
Mm,
and could go, sort of lead from that perspective. But this one, no chance. Like the
yeah.
people doing the chemistry were postdoc chemists, and
Oh.
I'd done like one first year chemistry
a,
course.
a new challenge for you then, something very different.
Yeah,
Well, this has been great, Sean. I want to wrap up with my gratitude question. So I'm a big fan of practicing gratitude and giving my guests a little bit of space at the end here to acknowledge anyone that they want to acknowledge for helping them in their journey. And you mentioned Dave's name a couple times. So
yeah.
that's probably one. Anyone else? Anything further you want to say about Dave, and anyone else you want to add?
I think Dave was just a really, cool guy to, very strong entrepreneur, but also very empowering, and I think just to have someone believe in you, and put their money where their mouth is and then just be that supporter for you. Like it was really cool for me. Like I knew he didn't care necessarily about the financial returns, which it worked out well for him, but I know that's why he wasn't doing it. He just cared
Hmm.
and he thought I was doing something good. And I really appreciated that support. And then fast forward, my partner Tracy, we've been together almost 5 years, and she sort of, seen me go through the last bit of First Light, through some of the like the end of those legal challenges to then resetting, beginning again with full on and X-Links, just having someone there, just being like an awesome supporter has been super nice.
Yeah. Sean, where can people go to learn more about you and learn more about full on lighting and X-Links and connect with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn's a good one, but I'm on all the social media stuff. Fullonlighting.com or xlinksmaterials.com are the company websites. And yeah, I think both these businesses, keep your eyes open. I think there's lots of cool things in store.
Cool. All right, Sean. Thanks so much.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.